The more we can bring about more voices in this kind of conversation, the more impact we can have on shifting the cultural conversation from one of life starts to get smaller and your best is behind you after 50 to, hey, your big game is yet to come. It's time to party.
Did you push record?
Thank you so much for tuning back into our second act with Paige and Silka. I'm happy to welcome Darrell Gurney back to our show today. Darrell, thank you for joining me again.
Thank you. I love the conversations.
If you missed our last segment with Darrell, Darrell is a career reinvention, a life reinvention coach who specializes in reinventing the second half of our life. Thus, his new project and book soon to come out, and I'm probably going to mess this up, Darrell, so please, give me the whole title. The Back 40. Give it over to you.
The Back 40, The Ride of Your Life. And the subtitle is 7 Critical Embraces for Life's Radical Second Half.
Yeah, perfect. And I've had the opportunity to read some sample chapters, and I'm going to, as soon as that's out, I so recommend people pick this up. Today, let's give a little taste as to why this is important and what are these 7 radical embraces.
Cool. Yeah, and I just want to say one thing about what you said. You talked about reinvention. And one thing, before I describe the embraces, rather than reinvention after 50, I call it becoming who you came to be. So in other words, the idea of reinventing is like, oh, I was something, and now I'm going to reinvent myself as something else, or I'm going to become something else. The idea behind the Back 40 is that you came here with a big picture view of what you came here to be, who you came here to be, and what you came here to do. You may not necessarily have liked where you grew up, who you grew up with, the parents you picked, the circumstances that you brought about in your early life, your past, traumatic events. The point being, though, is that what we're basically saying in the Back 40 is that the entire first half was just R&D. Research and development for who you came here to be and what you came here to do. In other words, you put yourself in a curriculum to get yourself to the point where after 40, 50, 60, you're actually now becoming who you came to be and you're about to do what you came here to do, versus the society's idea that the best is already behind you when you get to 50, 60 or something like that.
See, hearing that just gets me excited.
Yeah, and again, it's kind of like people say, "Oh, well, is that all Pollyanna?" Well, the truth is that all there is belief systems. People talk about, well, what's true? Well, I say, you choose what empowers you. So anyhow, I'll tell you about the 7 embraces. So what the book, and we've actually done a few 3-day courses on this with people to see how these ideas land. And if people go to our website, they'll see testimonials from people who've done our programs. But first thing to address is your past. Because if you are a victim at all to what has happened to you, it is a weight that will continually pull you down and close up your view of life. Okay? Now, I don't minimize at all some of the, really traumatic or, types of things that have happened to people. Okay? And yet, when you live that something was done to you, then it's always going to shape what comes after that, because you're going to limit yourself from the people you interact with, limit yourself from experiences. I mean, let's just take for instance, someone, this isn't a news story, someone who lived with a father that was maybe abusive or something like that. So interesting that they end up in relationships with men who, don't necessarily treat them great, right? We've got these things that we do, and it's subconscious and all other ways. But what we basically say is that to the degree that you can own your past as something that you totally designed and created. See, there's a lot said in, especially around psychology and stuff about people getting closure or being complete with something that happened or even forgiving, right? And again, forgiveness is a great thing. But what if you could look and have a way of seeing that everything that ever happened to you because you set it up this way to point you in the direction of who you came here to be. So what we do is basically say, hey, what if it was all lab experiments? What if you just did a ton of lab experiments in your first half, and that divorce and that terrible custody suit and that, and all those things that happen, what if on the other side of that, you can see the formula? See, what do you create in a lab? You create formulas, right? What if there was a formula pointing you in the direction you're here to go? We call them self-expression directives. So anyhow, the first thing to embrace is your past, because if you own it, there's no completion you need to get, there's no closure you need to get, and there's nobody to forgive because you designed it all yourself. The next is to embrace your present, because in a lot of ways, people's present is just another version of their past. I call it your past pretending to be present.
Oh, that's funny, yeah.
But in the same way, if you find yourself not living where you want to live, not in the relationship you want to be in, not earning the kind of money or in the kind of job or whatever, it's like, oh, well, what if this is a lab? What am I in this laboratory to discover about myself so that I can know the direction I came here to go? The third embrace is your gifts, because, we don't realize how awesome we are. And a lot of us went to school to learn a trade, or we learned a profession or learned a trade, but life actually gives us a lot of gifts that we don't realize came from just as valuable a school as a university. I call it the school of hard knocks, right? Or the school of life.
And probably more valuable if you cut right down to
it.
And,
it's really, those things are geared for who you came here to be and what you came here to do, right? In other words, you may be the next Dr. Ruth, and you've been a producer your whole life. You didn't come into life thinking you were going to be a Dr. Ruth, but now on the trajectory that you are, you've got certain gifts.
You saw the video we just posted today, didn't you?
No, I didn't, but I know you. But and then fourth is your values, because too often people don't do a re-inventory. Just like you have to inventory your gifts, you have to inventory your values, because your values now are very different than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And if you're living life based on obsolete values, you're just wonked out. It's wonkers. It's knowing what is it that's important to you now. The fifth embrace, I call your initiation. Now, others call that midlife crisis.
I like it, initiation, okay.
But what we say is it's not midlife crisis, it's actually midlife opportunity. It's that bag of bricks that hit you. And it sure hurt when it hit. And again, stuff happens throughout people's life, but big stuff's going to happen in your 40s and 50s. And there's usually a big thing that people will then latch onto. But if they are a victim to it, like a $500,000 custody suit or a divorce after 25 years, or he cheated on me, or, whatever it would be, if they're a victim to it, then again, like we said in the last segment, they become smaller. As opposed to, whoa, I created this so I can now launch myself. Yeah. And so the initiation is the beginning of the launch into the back 40. The last two embraces, number one is your purpose. And again, when you're a victim to things, you don't see how everything shaped you for something you're here to do and here to give. So then it's starting to embrace in your back 40 your purpose, like what you came here to be, to do, and what you came here to, who you came here to be. And then the last embrace I call a presence. Now, what I mean by a presence is this, is to the degree, and different people have different ways of relating to it, but I'm just going to call it that which is beyond you, that could use you if you're in alignment with it. call it universal intelligence, call it higher power, call it God, call it, whatever you want to call it. So this isn't religious, but it is of a spiritual ilk in the sense that, look, if you get aligned, then something can really use you and move you and the planet forward. And I'm not saying everybody has to be a Martin Luther King, but what I am saying is that when you can get aligned for how life has designed you to make a specific difference, there's a lot of power that can come behind you when you embrace a presence.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. We're all about the spiritual here as well. I think that's just important, and it's something that after 50, we start seeking that more and more as well. I can't wait for you to meet Paige in person. I think I see us doing a lot more together. Darrell, I see we're actually a little over time, but there wasn't any way I was going to cut you off. We'll be back for a lot more segments. I'm going to link to all of your information so everybody can get the back 40 when it does come out, as well as more information about your coaching and personal development programs that you do have. Anything you want to say in closing?
Just that I love having these conversations, and I think what we're doing, we kind of found each other through a mutual connection, but the more we can bring about more voices in this kind of conversation, the more impact we can have on shifting the cultural conversation from one of life starts to get smaller and your best is behind you after 50 to, hey, your big game is yet to come. It's time to party. So I just appreciate our time together. I'll also say if people would like to just get a little taste, the book's still to come out, but if they'd like to get a little taste of this, they can go to theback40.com/free, and they can get a copy of the top 10 tips for a radical second half.
Perfect. I will have that link in the video description. And Darrell, we'll see you soon on another episode of Our Second Act with Paige and Silka.
Great. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Bye. So glad you were able to join us today. If you haven't already done so, please just take 1 second and subscribe to our channel. Buttons right over here. And for more information about reinventing your life after 50, please visit our website, secondact.tv. See you soon.